Of all the world's great myths, the earliest is the tale of the hero's quest. And one story has been told for more than 3,000 years.
The story of Jason and the Argonauts is a classic tale of the hero's quest, a sort of ancient Greek mission impossible. It's got all the ingredients of fairy tale, heroes and princesses, magic and dragons. It's got a dark strain of tragedy at its heart. It was also the story of a sea voyage, a journey into the unknown, to reach the land where the sun rises. Jason's task, to paraphrase a modern version of the myth, was to boldly go where man had never been before.
Like many Greek myths, the tale begins in bloodshed. Jason's wicked uncle, Peleus, seizes the throne of Iolcos and deposes the rightful king, Jason's father.
Nephew.
To be secure, Peleus must kill Jason, but the boy is whisked away. For Jason, the gods plan a different destiny. Like Hamlet, or the Lion King, or Harry Potter, the boy knows about death, loss. He grows up here on Mount Pelion in central Greece, a magic mountain.
It's the summer resort of the gods. The gods used to move from Olympus and spend the summer in Pelion. Esculapius, you call him Asclepios?
The father of medicine, the god of medicine,
He lived here. Yes, it's the mountain of the centaurs, especially the most important and the centaur Hero. He was the one who taught Achilles.
Achilles, the hero of the Trojan War.
He was the teacher of Achilles.
Even today, when you talk to Greeks, the gods and heroes are real.
Many people have argued that these stories have some kind of historical basis because they seem so rooted in real places, like Mount Pelion here. But you always have to remember with myths that they mingle fantasy and fairy tale and real-life detail in a completely haphazard and delightful way. The story of Jason's like that. It begins with a little boy who has lost his mother and father, being brought up here on Mount Pelion by a kindly centaur, half man, half horse. From the very beginning, you're entering the world of magic.
In Greek myth, Chiron the centaur was the first practitioner of medicine.
Plenty of healing herbs here. Yeah, you can smell it everywhere, can't you? Yep. So,
And Jason's name, a Bronze Age name, means the healer.
Wow, look at that. It's amazing. So this is the cave where Jason was brought up by...
Εδώ είναι το μέρος που ο Ιάσον, όχι μόνο ο Ιάσονας, αλλά και πάρα πολύ ήρωες της ιστορίας μας.
In ancient times, tales were told of strange rituals up here. How men came to the cave dressed in freshly killed rams' fleeces. Some said human beings were sacrificed.
So, studies in ancient Greece, there used to be a festival every year here in the summer where people came up to the cave and dressed up in sheepskins and things like this. Have you ever heard of any festival like this that survived into modern times?
Όχι, μας δεν προλάβουμε να το δούμε. Το ακούσαμε ότι γινόταν σε παλιά χρόνια.
It was as recent as turn of the century.
100 years ago. Yes, yeah. Amazing. You can imagine it though here, can't you?
So there's a first clue to the ancient beliefs from which Jason's tale is spun. Like fairy tales, myths express our deepest thoughts, hopes, and fears. But in myths, especially Greek myths, the hero doesn't always live happily ever after. When he's 20 years old, Jason leaves Mount Pelion to claim his birthright, his father's kingdom. On the way, he uses a sandal carrying an old woman across a river. She's his protectress, the goddess Hera, in disguise. And then Jason heads down into the plain of Iolkos to his uncle's palace.
Though King Pelias sat upon the throne of Iolkos, he was uneasy. A prophecy from the oracle at Delphi had warned him to beware a stranger who would come wearing just one sandal. So when Jason arrived and boldly claimed the throne, the king was afraid. The sacred law of hospitality forbade him from harming Jason directly, but Pelias was cunning. "Tell me, young man," he said to Jason, "if you were me, and you were faced with a challenger to your throne, what would you do?" Jason replied, "I would set him a task that none but the gods could hope to perform." "Very well then," said Pelias. "If you would wear my crown, you must first bring me the golden fleece."
But what was the fleece? Well, the fleece came from a marvelous golden ram, a gift of the king of the gods, Zeus himself. The ram had flown east to the land where the sun rises. There the king, son of the sun god, had sacrificed it and hung the fleece in a sacred tree guarded by a dragon. A wondrous portent in a land no human had ever seen. Greek tradition set the tale of Jason in the age of heroes, the time of the Trojan War. What we call the Mycenaean age. Of course, it sounds like fairy tale, but Troy itself was a fairy tale till the archaeologists dug it up. And in 2001 came another amazing discovery, the Bronze Age palace of Jason's Iolkos, frozen in the moment of its final destruction.
Βλέπετε πάρα πολλές κήλικες, αλλά μαζί με τις... Αυτό που έχει...
For Dr. Adrinis Sismani, the fruit of a lifetime's quest.
Ανήκει στη Μικηναϊκή κοινή.
These are new. They haven't been used.
Καθημερινή χρήση. Βλέπετε ότι εδώ έχει φύγει από τη θέση του. Δεν είναι...
So this is a room in the Mycenaean palace of Iolkos, next to the kitchen block, destroyed, nobody's sure what the reason would be, towards 1200 BC, so after the time of the legendary time, but the marks of the catastrophe everywhere on the walls, a shelf or something like this has fallen down with these unused pieces of pottery around it. So what you're looking at is the actual destruction debris of the last Mycenaean palace of Iolkos in the position where it fell 3,000 more years ago. It's staggering, isn't it?
So the key question, could this be the palace Jason knew?
Is this the place that the poetic tradition is remembering?
Ένας αρχαιολόγος θα σας πει ότι εδώ είναι ο Ιάσονας ή ο Πελίας μόνο αν έχει γραπτά.
But despite such a wonderful find, when dealing with myths, historians always have to be cautious.
Είναι πολύ πιθανό να συμβαίνει.
Dr. Zman is saying, of course, as a professional archaeologist, I can't say this is the palace of Jason until I actually find his name inscribed here. But what I can say is that this was the great center of Mycenaean power at this time.
So the tale has a place and a time. In the late Bronze Age, around 1400 BC, Iolkos was the northernmost Greek kingdom, a seafaring place since prehistory. If there ever was such an adventure, it surely began here. But to go to the end of the earth, you need a boat. And not just any boat.
This is going to be a 50-oared Mycenaean boat, reconstruction of the Argo made from wood from Mount Pelion.
Its name, Argo, means swift. The Greeks say it was the first boat to have a name and a personality.
So why are you putting water on the wood?
Well, we'll have to keep it dry, to keep it wet, to take the right shape.
Oh, so it enables you to bend the wood. Oh, right. Just looking at pieces of tree just bent like. And this technique of just taking like 3 great big pieces of a tree and putting them together. This is an ancient technique. It's absolutely mind-blowing, isn't it? It's so kind of primitive. You put 3 trees together, you sail it to the Black Sea. So do you think something like this could sail to? You could sail it to the Black Sea, to the Pontus?
Yes, to the Pontus. Very strong.
When they build the Argo,
Yes.
they put a piece of wood in from Dodona. You know the
Yes.
magic wood. Which is it?
Wood is this? The wood which speaks.
Yeah.
Yes. This is oak. The magic oak from Dodona.
This is the magic oak from Dodona.
All Jason needed now was a crew, but not just any crew. He didn't wander the waterfront of Volos looking for deckhands. The legend as it's come down to us is a roll call of every great name from the Age of Heroes. The most famous crew that ever was.
The monument to the Argo and its crew, and here's the crew. All the most famous heroes in Greece. Hercules, Heracles, Orpheus, Castor, they're all here. Polydevkis, Theseus. They're like the Magnificent Seven. Everyone has their great talent or quality. And down here, Atalante, the great runner, girl, the only female member of the crew.
The legend says that Jason sailed from Greece to Kolkis, today's Georgia. But the way the earliest poets saw it, the Black Sea was part of the great ocean which circled the earth. It was literally a voyage to the edge of the world. At the start of the journey, Jason is young, inexperienced in the ways of men, and as Mount Pelion fades into the distance, he bursts into tears.
Something strangely unheroic about Jason. All the things that happened to him almost happened by chance. You think of the other great heroes. I mean, Achilles' great qualities, killing people without thinking. Odysseus, wiliness and cunning. He's always 2 steps ahead of everybody else. They're the kind of models by which young men should live their lives by and define themselves as men. Jason's different.
Jason's not macho, he's not a killer, and he's receptive to the power of women. In fact, Jason's relations with women will be his fate. As with other great heroes in the world's myths, Gilgamesh, King Arthur, even James Bond, he achieves his quest only with the help of a divine woman. And so the journey, as some ancient writers understood it, was also an inward voyage, a tale of initiation. And Jason's first test was on the island of Lemnos.
As they approached the island, the Argonauts realized with alarm that a host of warriors had come out to meet them. To their surprise, though, they soon discovered that the warriors were women. Their queen, Hypsipyle, was the first to speak, blushing in a most unwarlike fashion. "Stranger," she said to Jason, "do not be afraid. We are unprotected. We have lost all our men." And she told Jason how the women of Lemnos had been cursed by the goddess of love, and how, as a result, all their men had abandoned them for other women and left the island. "So," she continued, "we invite you all to stay here with us, and if the prospect pleases you, to come to our beds."
Of course, it sounds like another fairy story, but the tale of the Lemnian women was already well known to Homer in the 8th century BC. The place where it happened, Bronze Age Lemnos, was the earliest town in Europe, and strangely enough, it imported metals from the Black Sea coast on the way to Kolkis, the land of the Golden Fleece.
Astonishing to think that Polyocny was founded in the 5th millennium BC. That's before the pyramids, before Stonehenge. It was the most advanced Neolithic culture in the Aegean Sea. And in a volcanic island, it was a metalworking place. Homer calls it smoke-shrouded Lemnos. And it lasts all the way through to the Trojan War. So this was the Lemnos of the Greek myths. This was the town that the Argonauts came to in the story, and the place where the Lemnian women received them.
But the Lemnian women, don't forget, had been cursed by the goddess of love. She'd given them a stink so foul that they repelled all men. Where did that weird tale come from? Well, the women in Bronze Age Lemnos were skilled in dyeing cloth. They used a dye made from the glands of a sea snail mixed with human urine. It produces the richest colour and the worst stink on earth. A clue to a Bronze Age reality behind the tale? By making love to the women, the Argonauts broke the curse.
You are all the children of the Argonauts.
Yes! But the women of Lemnos had a dark secret. What they hadn't told Jason was that they'd murdered all their men. Got them drunk one night, stuffed them in sacks, and thrown them into the sea.
So this is the cliff. Place where they threw them off.
Πέταξα, Greek. Πέταξα.
Throw.
Πετάει, throw.
Wow. So the name of the cliff preserves the legend. Petaxa is to throw in Greek. This in the legend is the place where the Lemnian women threw them off the cliff into the sea.
As so often in Greek myths, the fairy tale turns out to be strange and cruel. Queen Ipsipili fell in love with Jason and asked him to stay and see his sons grow up. But Jason was a hero on a quest, and he had to go on.
So we've had high winds for the last 2 days and we couldn't get off the island, but the ferries finally arrived.
In the Bronze Age, the Age of Heroes, the name of the month of May, Ploistio, meant the time when sailing began. In winter, it was best to stay in the harbour. Even today, few Greeks, unless they have to, venture out of season across the wine-dark sea. Jason's quest, I'm sure, was a summer voyage. He wouldn't risk the wrath of Poseidon, the god of the sea. But as insurance, Jason landed at the island of Samothrace, home of the mysterious great gods, to get their magic protection before passing beyond the limits of the known. To reach the Black Sea, the Argonauts now needed to navigate the fierce currents pouring out of the great ocean through the Bosphorus. Great Turkish city, Istanbul has always been the crossroads between Europe and Asia. It was founded by the Greeks around 700 BC. In one version of the legend, it was Jason himself who built the first shrine on this spot. The beginning of one of the great colonizing adventures in history, which opened up the Black Sea and southern Russia to Greek civilization.
This was built in the middle of the 6th century, and for nearly 1,000 years was the main church of the Greek Orthodox world, the centre of the Greek Christian world. It succeeded the world of the ancients.
But in the myth, all that is a dream of the future. For Jason, the Straits of the Bosphorus were guarded by a terrifying obstacle that crushed all ships trying to pass. The clashing rocks. Only one man knew the secret of how to sail through. Phineas the seer, who'd been blinded by the gods for telling too much of the future.
Listen, Jason, said Phineas. About your destiny, I can only reveal what the gods permit. For Zeus, the king of the gods, wills it that humanity shall never see all of heaven's design. But for the clashing rocks, as you approach the cliffs, release a dove to fly on ahead. The rocks will clash shut. As they reopen, you must seize your chance and row through with all your might. But sir, said Jason, will we get safely back to Greece? That's what we want to know. My son, said the old man, I can say no more. But remember this, your best ally is Aphrodite, the goddess of love. The success of your quest depends on her. Ask me no more.
So Jason was the first sailor ever to pass the straits into the new world of the Black Sea.
So once the Argo whooshed through between the clashing rocks, they stayed open forever. That's them, according to the story. A landmark at the end of the Bosphorus. And ahead of them, for the first time for any Greek, according to the legend, there was open sea, a bare horizon.
Glory, your fire inflames men's souls, says a Roman poem on Jason. You are the siren song that drives men to risk their all. But are they heroes or mere dreamers?
The Golden Fleece is a present, first of all, of God to the Greeks. It is a way of traveling to this new world, which is rich in metals and in the knowledge of working the metals.
So you think they actually got into the Black Sea even in the late Bronze Age, even in the Age of Heroes?
Of course.
That the root story comes from this.
Of course.
Is there a real journey behind it at some point?
Hundreds of journeys during the late prehistoric, the late Bronze Age, trying to get through the Bosphorus into the Black Sea, because this was the richest part of the world.
So it's a kind of El Dorado for these early peoples. Yeah.
And all these sagas, and all these tales, and all these poems, and all these tragedies, and all this money, richness, wealth, wealthy people. I think that finally became one story.
Okay.
Jason.
Jason's journey along the Black Sea coast is a mix of real geography and fantasy. the Argonauts pass Amazons and fight off arrow-shooting birds. But on the way, you can still find traces of what seems like a real voyage. At one point, Jason lands in what sounds like an ancient industrial estate. The land of the Iron People.
This is where experimental archaeology comes in. Okay. I brought with me a magnet. Isn't that great? There you are. They did work iron here. In fact, the old metal workings are everywhere in the back of these hills. It's led many people to think that maybe this part of the story doesn't come from the Bronze Age, of course, but from the Iron Age. It just goes to show you how many layers go into a legend.
That night we camped at a place the Turks still call Cape Jason, just as the ancients did. And here the locals have a great twist to the story. This, they say, is as far as Jason got, because the Argo sank here, and Jason and his brothers settled down and married local girls.
There were three ancient Greek brothers who were called Jason, which is Jason, Gerson, and Samson. And Jason stayed here. Gerson, am I right? Samson back at the city of Samson down there. So it's the local legend. It's a kind of tale of colonization. Isn't that interesting? Really amazing.
Civilizations rise and fall, religions change, but not the human imagination, which hands on the gifts of the past, almost like a genetic code. In the abandoned Greek monastery of Sumela, there's a sacred cave.
Come look at this. Isn't that sensational?
Here you can see the Christian world which overpainted Jason's pagan universe. But they still share the same myths, the divine woman, the supernatural powers, and the heroes.
You see Jonah and the whale looking very like Jason being delivered from the dragon, isn't he?
The hero's task is still to enter the realm of death.
The saints, the heroes.
And by his courage and steadfastness gain everlasting fame.
It makes you realise that all the great myths of humanity, the story of Jason and the Golden Fleece included, are really about the conflict between good and evil and facing up to death. Just get ready to run if they come this way,
Just before the Georgian border, I stumbled on a bull festival straight out of Jason's world.
You think of all those Greek myths, like Zeus, the king of the gods, takes the form of a bull to seduce Europa. It's the bull that comes out of the sea to father the Minotaur, the bull-headed monster that inhabits the labyrinth. There's something about our dreams here. Just look at this. Jason doesn't know it yet, but that's one of the tests that lies ahead.
And so we entered Georgia, ancient Colchis, a land of the Golden Fleece.
Georgia has a wonderfully rich history. For centuries it's been a bridge between East and West. And that bridge was first created by the ancient Greeks, who began to found colonies here after 600 BC, as they saw it, following in the footsteps of the Argonauts.
And the Greeks are still here.
This is Michael's mom, and the children are preparing pictures
Oh
for us.
my God, you're not going to believe this. Look at this.
Они побежаются за фотографиями.
Look at this. Do they know any of the people here? Or are these...
Знали за это?
Конечно, всех знаю.
Of course I know all of them.
Это мой отец.
It is my father.
Это там Цацанин, Сидеров был его сегодня.
It's the faces of the people.
Все греки. Ну, они...
The lyre player could almost be Orpheus. There's Atalante, the runner. There's young Jason himself. Big boned, open face. After sweeping along the coast of Colchis, the Argo entered the mouth of the river Phasis. In early Greek myth, this was the edge of the world.
See the surf line there, which is the waves meeting the river as it pours out. We're going to try and get through that.
Today the Phasis is called the Rioni.
Struck land already. He's just walking across the estuary now just to see whether there's anywhere where the water's deep enough for us to get in. Ancient heroes may have sailed into the Phasis, but of course people don't do that today. Port's the other side. Fantastic. Can you remember the way out? Yeah.
Now, strange as it may seem, the Argonauts had got all the way to Colchis without stopping to think how they would get hold of the Fleece. So they held a council of war. Some of the heroes favoured using force, but Jason suggested a more subtle tack. "My friends," he said, "you stay here on board while I go and parley with their king. I'll sound him out, see if he's arrogant and confident in his power, or if he's friendly. Maybe we can strike a bargain. In exchange for the Fleece, the heroes of Greece could offer to vanquish his enemies."
To the ancient Greeks, Colchis was a sinister, alien land. ruled by a cruel king, Aeetes, whose power depended on keeping the Golden Fleece. They called his city Ea, and they placed it somewhere in the waterways and lakes behind the coast. But was it a real city? Needless to say, archaeologists have combed this part of Georgia looking for the city of the sun god. In the 1870s came rumours of fabulous finds near the town of Vani.
After every torrential rain, out of the hillside were washed gold ornaments, jewels, rings and necklaces. The whole hill, said one of the newspapers, is full of gold.
The gold of Colchis even drew the legendary excavator of Troy, Heinrich Schliemann, the man who found the jewels of Helen and the mask of Agamemnon. Perhaps Schliemann hoped to find the Golden Fleece itself. Modern archaeologists have found much more gold at Vani, and a walled native Colchian city.
So what have you got here? Do you know yet?
Its heyday was from 600 BC, long after the Bronze Age, but just the time when the Greeks were planting their first colonies here, when the myth had become fixed in Georgia.
Do you think that could possibly have been an expedition here to this place in the Bronze Age to Colchis?
Maybe in the myth, some memory preserved about the first explorers of the Black Sea area. And maybe this is connected with the period of Greek colonization.
In the 8th century, when literally was fixed, this myth of Argonauts or the Golden Fleece country, it was the Colchis, where it stopped. The traveling of this myth stopped in Colchis, and after this I think Colchis is this country rich in gold, the El Dorado of the ancient Greeks.
Fantastic.
And it's actually rich in gold.
And it is rich.
It's actually also rich in gold.
Rich in gold, yeah.
Who were Argonauts? Were one good, well-organized band of robbers.
A band of robbers? A simple act of piracy? Could that be the truth behind Jason's quest? A Roman writer says that in his day the descendants of King Aeetes still ruled here and mined gold in Sphani, today's Spaghetti.
Yeah. Richard, I'm Michael. Very nice to meet you.
Spaghetti is a wild valley up in the Caucasus. Only days before we arrived it was still closed to outsiders, and we could only go there with the protection of local families.
So we've been given a few rules. Don't look at the men for too long in the eye. We take them as a threat. Don't look at the women at all. And never show fear.
Heracles no doubt said the same thing to Jason.
This is a place where, in my opinion, Argonauts turned to that side, because that time the roads were going in a different way, not like today. And this was the main caravan road. This was? Which would go to Mestia and everywhere. Across the Caucasus? Across the Caucasus. Wow.
Here, the Greek writer Strabo offers another explanation of the legend. He says they panned for gold using fleeces.
You create a kind of wooden box, you put the branches in at the bottom, and when you put the fleece in and pin it down, you put the whole thing into the water so the water rushes through it like a little sluice.
This is the gold, like top quality. We call it bajavalo. Dinari danari. It's from this river, yes.
Another little clue to add to the myth, isn't it? Correct. Thank you. Thank you very much. Hello. Nice to meet you. Hello. Hello. Hi. Hello. Hi. Not yet. Oh, not yet. Bit early in the day for that. What's brought the soldiers up here?
Internal troops.
Right.
Internal. Means it's basically police. For the moment, they came to guard you.
Cool. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Yeah. Well, there was potential trouble on the road yesterday. Potential trouble here can rapidly turn to AK-47s being fired. Several centuries of blood feud. It's best to send the police in. Hello. Hi guys. Hello.
Here in Svaneti, you can still get a sense of the Kolkis portrayed by the Greek and Roman writers. These towers have been built since ancient times for defense against their own neighbors, against blood feuds carried on for generations. To the ancient Greeks, this was the very image of the barbarian. In a society like that, loyalty to the clan is paramount. Hospitality is a sacred duty, but also a way of showing your power and your influence. Women are zealously guarded, the men rule, and daughters must obey their fathers absolutely, especially in matters of marriage. Svaneti is so isolated that although they're Christian up here, songs and beliefs still survive from the pagan past. Songs like this, an ancient hymn in praise of the sun god. Sort of thing Jason might have heard. That night, the Argonauts were invited by King Aeetes to a banquet. As the drink flowed, Jason calmly asked the king for the fleece. The king reacted with murderous fury.
Yes.
But remember, the success of Jason's mission will depend on the goddess of love. Now, the whole story changes in tone. In fact, it becomes a different story. It becomes almost a Greek clash with the other, a clash of cultures. And a new character appears in the story who will take the story over. A character who will turn out to be one of the greatest characters in all of myth and literature. The daughter of the king of Kolkis, Medea.
Now an oracle had foretold that if King Aetes were to lose the Fleece, he should forfeit his throne. He wanted to kill Jason then and there, but he could not break the law of hospitality. So he too set Jason a task that none but the gods could hope to fulfill. In my meadow, I have 2 fire-breathing bulls, he said. Yoke them. Plough the field, sow it with dragon's teeth, and then defeat the army that will spring from the ground. Do this, and I'll give you the Fleece. The king thought the tasks impossible, but Aphrodite, the goddess of love, had done her sweet work. She made the king's daughter, Medea, fall in love with Jason. That night, Medea visited him and gave him a magic ointment that made him impervious to the fire of the bulls and the swords of the earthborn men. In return, Jason promised to be her husband and to take her back to Greece.
As with all great myths, there are many strands to this tale and many meanings. The last stage of our journey here in Georgia was to find the Fleece itself. Up in the remote region of Peshavi, you can still visit the sacred grove. Here they still sacrifice the ram and show the Fleece, and you can still meet Medea's descendants, the women oracles. They're Christians today, but they did these things in the age of heroes. And after the sacrifice, they eat the flesh and drink to life.
Thank you. Thank you.
Before the women stepped in this land, people would walk north of which
I do vegetarian too. Thank you, thank you.
Jason and Medea enter the sacred grove. Medea has prepared a magic potion from her herbs, which she anoints on the eyes of the serpent to make it go to sleep, and then Jason takes the Fleece down from the tree. In some versions he actually kills the serpent, but in one ancient version he seems to have been swallowed by it, and is only regurgitated and brought back to life by the intervention of the goddess herself. And maybe that gives us a clue to the original form of the story. Perhaps, in origin, it's a kind of initiation story in which the young hero undertakes an impossible quest, enters the realm of death, and is redeemed only by the divine woman herself, whose lover he must become. So with the golden fleece in his hands, Jason swears by the everlasting gods he will be true to Medea forever. The ancient storytellers told many versions of Jason's return to Greece. Some took the Argo round the eastern part of the world, and travelled up through the deserts of Africa. Others through the frozen wastes of the Arctic, past Britain and through the Pillars of Hercules. Apollonius says they went up the Danube and carried the Argo through Central Europe to the Mediterranean. But all agree that they arrived here at the little island of Anafi, which the god Apollo made rise up to save them from a last storm.
And there you might have thought the story ended. Jason and Medea go back to Greece, swear undying love, and live happily ever after. But Greek myths are not like that. It's given a few mortals to live happily ever after. Human beings can be almost children of the gods. They can fulfill every oracle, protected by the queen of the gods herself. But if you overstep the mark, if you fail to show due reverence both to the gods and to your fellow human beings, if you break your most solemn vows, then fate will catch up with you, and your true destiny will be revealed.
So Jason returned to Iolcos with the golden fleece and his bride Medea. His wicked uncle King Pelias was astonished to see him, but Medea used her magic to destroy Pelias. She persuaded his daughters that they could rejuvenate him if they chopped him up and boiled him in a cauldron. So Pelias died. Jason was made king, and the oracle was fulfilled. For a while they prospered, and Medea had 3 sons. But the people of Iolcos were afraid of Medea and her witchcraft, and in the end they drove Jason and his family into exile.
They came south to Corinth.
This is where the story enters the most cruel and dark side of human nature. It's the bit that they never tell in the Hollywood and TV versions, but it's the bit that makes it a great Greek myth rather than just a fairy tale.
Here in Corinth, the famous Jason was made king. He was offered a beautiful young princess as a wife, and he accepted and broke his solemn promise to Medea.
Now, of course, Medea was a larger-than-life character. She had gods among her ancestors as well as humans, and her passions were correspondingly extreme. In revenge for what her husband had done, she murdered their children.
Medea's crime, you might think, is a pure creation of the poets. And so it is, except for a strange discovery in a lonely bay just over the water from Corinth.
The ancients connected those events with a headland where there was a temple to Hera, the queen of the gods, a temple dedicated by Medea herself, and the tomb of the murdered children, and a weird statue of a frightening woman simply known as the Terror.
year's punishment, she was immortal, and the gods protect their own. They took her back to Mount Olympus and gave her a new husband, the great Achilles himself, a true hero.
And as for Jason, well, he ends the story as he began it. Alone in the world with one sandal. And he wanders back to Iolcos, to the thing that made his fame, his old boat, the Argo itself, whose rotting hulk was now lying on display by the seashore. And sitting weeping in its shadow, the magic beam, the speaking prow, crashes down on his head and kills him. Made by the gods, destroyed by the gods. His destiny had been fulfilled.